Good evening, and welcome to the Caring View, the online health and social care platform free to access to absolutely everybody. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. You will never miss an episode, and you can catch up on all of our previous shows on there, as well as our podcast. If you're watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, or Instagram, make sure that you give us a follow on there as well. Give us a like and a share. We would more than appreciate that. For all of our information, go to www.thecaringview.co.uk. You can access all of our free resources, our guides, our episodes, you name it, is on there, including our supplier list of people that we have worked with in the past and people that we know, people that we recommend that you can use in social care without fear of a poor service. This is all completely free. It doesn't cost you a penny. Everything we provide to you is free. All of the resources we provide to you are free. Don't forget, we still have our CQC posters that you can download directly from our website that detail all of the quality statements and their related regulations. We are going to be going through one of those domains tonight, one of those key questions. We do this for free because of our fantastic sponsors, and we need to give a quick shout out to them before we get started. So we have Prosperwell, which is the UK's God, I had a week off and I don't know how to do things. The UK's, I'm going to let Mark do the banners. Mark, you do the banners, I'll do the talking. The UK's leading digital marketing agency, www.prosperwell.co.uk. Absolutely fabulous. Tea with Toby. Go check out his podcast as well. It's a brilliant podcast. We also have CBAT, which is Care Business Associates Training. Mark, I believe Paul Blaine, MD from Care Business Associates Training, is joining us next week as well on the show, which is going to be incredible. All of your social care and healthcare training needs can be found through CBAT. And finally, last but not least, and won't be last but not least for a while because we do have a new sponsor coming on board, but news on that in the next couple of weeks, is Attis Care by Attis Insurance Brokers. All of your comprehensive care coverage and proactive risk management through them. Good evening, Mark. How are you?
Yes, not too bad. Not too bad. You?
I'm actually well. I am well for a change, and there are a number of reasons that I'm well. We have a red government. Not that I am, politically swayed by any stretch of the imagination, but I was, I was excited to see Angela Rayner declare that they will protect the T in LGBT. Which has been a worry for so many of my friends and so many within our community recently, the war on transgender people around the country. So I am elated that Labour have taken a firm stance on that. West Streeting, do like, a little bit like this, still calling him Health Secretary, totally missing off the social care. Nothing's really changed there, and we've still not got any sort of major manifesto of how they're going to fix things. But they've started positive. They've started strong. They're going around the nations, and I don't know, building bridges. I'm trying to be hopeful. I'm trying to be positive. We had the news from France where the far right group didn't take leadership as they thought they were going to. Biggest shocking blooming election in French history. So I feel positive that politics seem to be getting themselves a bit on track at the moment. And I also no longer have sickness and diarrhea. So, Brucey bonus. How are you?
Yeah, no, not too bad. Yeah, I think we all saw Labour coming in, didn't we, this time around? I think Lib Dems seem to be doing a lot on social media around pushing the social care angle. So hopefully they have enough backbone to kind of push that through and kind of challenge Labour on their decisions. Because I think obviously we all know that's very much needed. But yeah, I guess it's very early doors, and I guess time will tell. But yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I couldn't care less about the leadership race for the Tories. No one cares about that right now. They're literally just going to have to put someone in post just to sort of try and get them back on track. I do feel like they're going to try and absorb a lot of that reform now, moving forwards, because they lost a lot there. But yeah, no, really, really interesting. It was their sort of party song should have been like a Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus this year, because they really did just come in and clear the board.
None of them really had a song this year.
No,
I don't know why. Yeah.
I mean, from what I saw, there are no more Tory MPs in office in Wales, just completely wiped out, like eradicated. Like a meteor's come and wiped them out like the dinosaurs. Very bizarre how everything's gone after the last 14 years of them in power. So yeah, let's see. Let's just keep campaigning for social care and let's see what we can get coming from them there.
Indeed.
Okay, so third episode of our CQC series, this, isn't it? So we're going through the caring key question. For those of you who are joining and haven't watched any of our previous episodes and don't know what the new CQC framework is, oh my God, how not and why not? The CQC framework changed on the 6th of February this year for all health and social care services. It's now the single assessment framework. The CLOEs were, well, the recommendations under the CLOEs, the areas that we needed to look at under the CLOEs completely changed. And we now have what we call quality statements. There's 34 of them in total, and they all fall under the key questions. Key questions have not changed, so we still have: is this service safe? Is this service effective? Is this service caring? Is this service responsive? Is this service well led? And the way that CQC are going to find that now is through these quality statements, and those quality statements apply to all services across health and social care. The way that they inspect under those quality statements and those key questions and the evidence categories will differ depending on your service type, and they will differ across social care as well. So what is one for a care home will not be the same for a home care service, for example. But the quality statements are the quality statements, and there is no ways of getting around this. We're all in social care, so actually it's going to be quite easy for us to cover, especially the caring one, off tonight, I think, and try and cover all aspects of services. You're lucky tonight, it won't go on 2 hours like our first one did under safe. There are only 5 quality statements under caring. And I truly believe caring's the one where if you don't get a good in caring, you really need to take a step back with your team and go, this is the easiest one to get a good in. We should just be caring people working in social care anyway. So why haven't we got caring here? Why aren't we seeing people as people? And that's not me trying to shame anyone. And I know simple things can trip us up. But the caring is your sort of freebie in the green circles. You should be able to get this good quite easy on caring. But nonetheless, we will go through these quality statements. The way we do it is Mark will introduce us to what that key question is. Then we'll read out the quality statements, and then we just sort of give top tips, listen to the comments, ask your questions. If you've got any suggestions that you do in the comments to meet this quality statement, please let us know. If you've been inspected under the new framework and have any feedback for us and any guidance, please do let us know. Mark and I have not been lucky enough to receive an inspection under the new framework yet. CQC, don't listen to that. Please don't come just yet. But yes, shall we get on?
Yes, let's do. So, caring. So the CQC say that people are always treated with kindness, empathy, and compassion. They understand that they matter and that their experience of how they are treated and supported matters. Their privacy and dignity is respected. Every effort is made to take their wishes into account and respect their choices to achieve the best possible outcomes for them. This includes supporting people to live as independently as possible. So quite a nice overarching kind of says what it does on the tin, I think.
Yeah.
And then the first quality statement under that is kindness, compassion, and dignity. So the CQC expect all providers to treat people with kindness, empathy, and compassion, and we respect their privacy and dignity. And we also treat our colleagues from other organisations with kindness and respect. So before I hand to you, I think I was quite pleased to see this in here because I think, obviously, we know the framework is across health and social care. And I think sometimes social care hasn't always had that kindness and kind of compassion from our health colleagues. So I think it was quite nice that actually everybody's going to be held accountable to this. And I think we all get very passionate about the people we support. And I think it's very easy to kind of fly off the handle if you don't agree with the advice or something that somebody's saying. But actually, it's about putting that aside, remaining professional at all times, and having that kind of mutual respect and understanding and meeting the needs of the person in the middle. Adam, any tips or advice for kindness, compassion, and dignity?
I've got loads. I think, though, Mark, I want to start with a quick sort of story, if that's okay, because one of the reasons, and I've told this story many a times, whether you've seen me at a care show, whether I've presented for you at your organisation, whether I've done it at a care association, but it's a story that I tell everybody around why I love social care so much and where my passion came from working in social care. So started in social care at 18. Dad was very unwell, came through it all in the end, decided to die like 10 years later. So great, thanks, Dad. But I thought, you know what? Seeing my dad have all this care, I'm going to get into this and I'm going to see what it's all about. Started in social care Within the first week, saw my first dead body, which terrified me. Not only did it terrify me seeing a dead body, but it terrified me thinking that one day I'm going to die. And I was like, oh my God, I am going to die one day. This is real. Like, this isn't sort of like in the movies where they just sit there and roll their eyes back. Life is real and it does come to an end. And it was terrifying. So I was battling with that at 18. And then the week after, I was supporting a chap in the same home, first home that I'd ever worked in. And he was telling me about how he'd been shot from a Spitfire. Little chap called Jack. Can't remember his surname, which upsets me, but it is what it is. And he was telling me about how he'd been shot down from a Spitfire during the war and how he'd survived. And as he was telling me, one of the nurse call bells went, and I thought, I need to go and get this. I said, I'm really, really sorry, Jack. I'll come back in a minute and I'll listen to the rest of your story. Anyway, with that, he picked up his walking stick and he hit me across the head. And he said, it's not a story, it's my life. And I sat there and I thought, this is the bit that I've been missing about social care. We do have stories to tell people, but actually seeing it as a story rather than seeing it as a life is something that I'd been missing. And although I'd only been in it for sort of two weeks, it was one of those things that no one had ever taught me. No one had ever told me about. No one had ever said, these are people. At the end of the day, they are 80 years of love and loss and laughter and sadness and wives and husbands and children and grandchildren and, deaths and births and all of that. None of that is ever taught you in training. None of that is ever brought to you when you first enter social care. And it's something that a lot of people have to learn along the way. I think we're getting better at communicating that to people. And I think we're getting better at making the human element more obvious in social care. But that was something that had never been communicated to me until Jack had told me that. So then ever since then, I've always thought to myself, right, person first, story second, care third, because I need to make sure I see these people as people. I need to understand who this person is as an individual before I can do anything. If I do not know who this person is, if I do not know their history, if I do not know what's important to them or what is meaningful or what scares them or what excites them, I'm never going to be able to care for them. I can provide support, but I can't truly care for them unless I actually know what it is that makes that person tick. It's super important. It'd be like someone putting me in a nursing home in front of a television to watch the football. Because I swear to God, if you think you've seen challenging behavior, wait till you make me watch football, because you will get challenging behavior. Put me in front of a Star Trek episode or RuPaul's Drag Race or MasterChef, happy. I'm at home. And it all comes down to understanding who these people are. So I think for the whole of this key question of caring, I just want everyone to think, whether you're new to social care, whether you've been in social care for a while and you're starting to lose the buzz, just think about people. And that's what this is all about, is really, truly knowing who people are. And I think that goes a long way in supporting us when trying to meet these key questions coming forwards, but also when it comes to supporting our team, inducting new team members, it's making sure we really drum in that human element. We need to be making sure that their training, when they start their induction training, when they come in for that first shift, when they come into shadow, the first thing we say to them is not, oh, by the way, I need you to sit and read these policies and I need you to do this training, because if you don't, you're going to go to prison. What we need to be communicating to them, because a lot of people are coming into care new, which is great. We have got an aging workforce. We need to continue supporting an aging workforce and introducing people into social care at an older age. That being said, of all age groups, so many people are coming in social care and so many people are coming in for the first time. And actually what we need to be doing from day one is going, you are supporting people now. You are caring for people. And the number one thing we need you to do is get to know these people. We need you to understand these people. And we need you to care about them. And we need you to make what's important to them important to you. Because if you cannot do that, and if you do not do that, you are not going to succeed in health and social care. Because you could know all the policies off the top of your head. You could know the regulations off the top of your head. You could tell me how to provide intricate and complex care off the top of your head. But if you're missing that element of actually really caring about who a person is and understanding who a person is and having that empathy and that passion and that compassion, then you're not really worth being in the sector, because we're missing too much. You're missing that sort of connecting tissue between providing outstanding care and just meeting someone's needs. It's great to meet people's needs, but actually we need to make people feel whole. We need to make them feel respected. We need to make them feel truly valued as a human at the most vulnerable point in their life, they are there in a building full of gosh knows how many other residents, changing faces on the team, agency workers, sponsorship workers with language barriers, which I'm not knocking. I think it's great that we've got sponsorship working going on, but these people are terrified. They're at the most vulnerable point in their life. And if the people who they trust in their lives with can't take that time to actually sit down and go, I want to know who you are, please tell me about you, let's share this. I call it carefree conversations. Mark, you and I have had this conversation a number of times, but what we tend to find in social care is we end up having too many conversations that focus just on someone's health needs. So, how are your legs doing now? And, how are you finding your new diet? Or, have you had your new medication yet? Or when's the nurse next coming to see you? Or when you go into the hospital next? We don't really spend that much time sitting down and going, did you finish that jigsaw you started the other day? Or, tell me about what you did when you were younger. What sort of movies came out? What was like the number one movie when you were younger? Or what was your favorite music when you were younger? And I know those are two questions, but they then spark longer conversations because you remember what they've said. And then you can build and prepare for your conversations moving forward. You can build and prepare for any of those activities and life enrichments that you want to do. So that's really what I wanted to start with on this whole thing for caring, is just understanding who people are as individuals. I don't know whether you want to come in first, Mark, before I then start reeling off more stuff.
No, and I think it's good to remember why we come into care, because I think you are right, especially if you've been in the game for a long time. And I think we see it on some of these undercover programs where you're picking up a lot of shifts, whether that's because there's pressure to cover those rotas or that you need the money or whatever the reason is. And actually sometimes you lose that remembering about actually what made you join social care and what was it that you wanted to do and the difference you wanted to make. So no, I think that's a good reflective piece for everybody to look at. So
I was going to say, it's one thing that always sticks with me, because I always think if I go home and I ask myself at the end of the day, have I done the best for these people? Yes. Have I done it in a way that actually is the most meaningful for them? And have I done everything in a way that makes them feel the best person they can possibly be? If there are days when I've gone home and I've gone, actually, no, I could have done that better, I always think of Jack. Jack stays with me every single day. Every single day that I'm working in social care, Jack stays with me. I've supported hundreds of people during my time, but Jack is the one person who will always stick out for me, because he's the one person that actually gave me that life lesson. And I'm just trying to say, have your own Jacks, have those people who stick with you and you can refer back to in your own head to go, do you know what? If that person did anything whilst I was with them, they taught me this. And it's a really strong thing to make sure you keep those lessons with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So before I dive in, we've had a comment come in. So we really need the life stories embedded into the care plans. It makes it so much more personal and allows us to be more empathetic to individuals we are supporting. So absolutely agree. So I was on a manager group the other day and they were talking about how they'd had the local authority inspection, so the PANS inspection, and they were talking about that their care plans were fine, they were detailed, but actually they didn't get the full marks because it didn't have the real details. So it had a list of activities that people like. So, for example, reading. But actually, the feedback was, what books do they like reading? How often do they like reading? Like that really granular detail, which I think sometimes we miss. Now that we've got the generic, here's what should be included in care plans, I think the days of actually those finer details and remembering those finer details make all the difference. So, actually, if somebody likes to watch films, what kind of films do they like? What genre of films do they like? Do they like going to the cinema? Do they like watching on their own in the communal area? There's a big section on this quality statement around responding quickly to people. So we'll tie into the responsive domain. There's a whole section around young adults. So I'm assuming that they're talking about majority of people with a learning disability and or autism, and around family and parental involvement and managing that care and support. So we know that historic, that's been an issue for many people drawing on social care. They want to see a culture of kindness and respect, not both internally, but also with other agency. Huge section on dignity. It doesn't really talk about, and like in the best practice guidance section, there isn't much actually there too much around the dignity. But when I did some digging around, definitely around meal times seems to come up. So make sure that obviously people have got dignity then. And it doesn't really mention this in the quality statement, but in a couple of the reports, it talks about reducing social isolation and how providers could utilize tech a lot better. There is one website that links the Dignity in Care website, which back in the day was always the pledge that you could sign. And I actually thought it had gone completely. I didn't realize it was still around, but it does link to the audit tools that they've got. So I'll share that in the chat, because there's medication audits around dignity. There's an actual dignity one, a dignity tool for working with vulnerable adults, with older people, organization dignity, mental health dignity tools. So I'll share them. It's just one website, but yeah, a lot of links there around actually auditing and bits and pieces, which I think a number of providers quite often reach out to you and I, Adam, on the Caring View around audits and bits and pieces. Over to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to digest under this quality statement, and let's start with kindness and compassion. This is really, really easy. How are you ensuring that your team understand what empathetic communication is? It's important that we train people how to listen and how to understand, how to respond, especially around concerns of individuals. And listening is one of those things where it's really important. One thing I tell managers all the time, this is since I've did consultancy work, since I've been a line manager of managers, since I've supported people, the hardest thing to do when you're a manager is to keep your mouth shut and to actually listen and truly listen. And that sort of lesson needs to be given to other people as well. Whereas someone's telling us something, we need to really digest what people are saying to us. We need to be active listeners rather than passive listeners. We want to be able to hear what they're saying and not overtalk them. And we want to be able to respond in a way that actually validates what they've said and supports them and gives them that trust that actually we are listening and we take it in kind. I think under the sort of kindness and compassion as well is thinking about the environment that we work in. So do you walk around the corridors telling your team off going, oh my God, I can't believe you've not done this again. This is ridiculous. Oh, and actually that sort of mentality then spreads with a lack of kindness, because if we can't treat our team kindly, how can we treat the people that we support kindly? And if we are treating the people we support kindly, we're not treating the team kindly, how's that going to affect the mental well-being of the people that we are supporting? So think around your environment. Is kindness your sort of normal thing? Is it a value you've got? I know it's one of our values at my company. And how are you making sure that kind environment is all encompassing? I'm thinking, and I want to talk about this just in a second when we talk about leading by example, but is it embedded throughout all of your team? So do your IPC or your domestic teams, do your kitchen teams, do your housekeeping teams, do your maintenance teams, do your training teams? They should all be interacting with your residents where possible. If you've got a maintenance person in your living room putting up a television, you don't want them going in, putting up the television and walking out. You want them to come in and go, oh, hi Mavis, I've not seen you for a while. How are you doing? Oh, I'm going to put a new TV up for you. I know you love your Coronation Street. Do your team actually know what's important to these people? Because actually, it's not just your care team, it's not just your nurses, it's not just the managers, it's everybody in our organization has to have that kindness with them, has to have that caring approach. Empathy. We need to be able to understand perspectives. What we might find as something that is trivial actually might be really, really important to somebody else. And it's understanding what's led to that importance of that situation for someone. Is there that trauma-informed care approach that we need to be aware of? Is there something underlying that we need to know? Or have they, well, no, it is just that trauma-informed approach. But actually understanding why something's so important to someone. So if they don't get their paper in the morning and they get incredibly upset, not just going, oh, it's only a paper, don't worry about it, it'll come tomorrow. Wrong. We need to be saying to them, oh, do you know what, don't worry, let me go and talk to the manager, I'll make sure someone can nip out and go and get you that paper, I know it's really important to you. Those tiny little things are what make us really attentive and really empathetic, is it? I'm not going to say empathic because that's one of them people that goes, I'm sensing. So I think it is empathetic. Correct me for my grammar in the chat if you know. And that brings obviously around that emotional support as well. Holistic approaches, holistic care. We need to be thinking around care that supports people as a whole, not just on one aspect, because we can't just treat one aspect of a person. We don't treat people, we support people. I do apologize, I've put my phone on silent. So it's around that holistic approach. How are you documenting that holistic approach? How are you evidencing that holistic approach? Are you making sure that the care that you're giving includes emotional as well as physiological, as well as psychological, as well as everything else? And if so, how have you documented that? I'm not saying you need a holistic care plan. Your care plan itself should be holistic, and it should be easy to understand from a care plan that you've understood all aspects of an individual's life. Mark, you were talking about dignity and how CQC doesn't have much down for best practice on dignity. So I was scribbling away while you were talking about it. So one simple thing you can introduce in your home, or I'm sorry to say home, but also your home care services or wherever it is knocking on a door. You know, it's really, really simple to forget that actually going into someone's bedroom in the nursing home or walking around someone's home in their own home isn't our workplace. We just work in someone's house. And I've seen so many times through my years, carers just walking into bedrooms, nurses just walking into bedrooms, heck, maintenance people just walking into bedrooms to get jobs done without even knocking on the door. Now, that person may be in a state where they can't answer the door, get up, or even say, hello, come in. But actually, just knocking on that door, opening it slightly, popping your head in and going, morning, do you mind if I come in? Is everything okay? That is one step just to making sure you work in a more dignified way. And embedding that with all your team, I think, is super, super important. Things you can also consider around this is, do you have a blanket approach to drinking cups in your home? Does everybody have a beaker? And if everyone has a beaker, do they all have lids? Because actually, do they need beakers? Have you done any work around reducing infantilization in your home? So are there other options that you can use? Have you got adapted mugs that actually look like mugs that are better for people and look a little less clinical, a little less childlike? Even for people who do require beakers, are there options out there that actually just look a little nicer and make people feel less like their condition and more like someone just having a drink? If you use clothes protectors, do you use those sort of checkered ones with the trim around them and a button on the back, and have they gone through the tumble dryer so often that they're actually starting to split now? Or do you have other methods? I mean, oh my gosh, do you use blooming blue aprons? I've seen so many people sat at dining tables in nursing homes wearing plastic blue aprons, and that's for years I've seen that. Or are you looking at newer ways to provide people support? We have a lot of elderly women who live in our nursing homes who probably, if we sat down and asked them, were homemakers, and they probably sat down at the dining table wearing a kitchen pinny. So actually, have you considered getting some kitchen pinnies in for people who are used to cooking and used to sitting and used to being that sort of homely person for them to wear at meal times instead? I'm not going to go on too long, Mark, because I know there's only 5 quality statements and I don't want us to overdrag just for the sake of me liking the sound of my own voice. Support systems, have we got those support systems in place for our team? Frida, I think we need to mention Frida. Do your team know what Frida is? Do you know what Frida is? Am I pronouncing that correctly? So freedom, respect, equality, dignity, and autonomy. So freedom to choose. How are we documenting how people have that choice in their care? How are we making sure that we're providing that care in a way that is important to them, but also in a way that they've chosen that care as well? So I'm thinking cultural sensitivity. We may have people who have religious requirements where they only need female carers or only want female carers. We need to respect that. If we don't, and we say, well, actually, we can't do that, I'm really, really sorry, we're not really respecting someone's cultural needs, their religious needs, or their personal preferences. You know, it might be that there are personal preferences. Not everyone gets on together. So it might be someone says, look, I'm really, really sorry. I've tried my hardest, but I just don't get on with this person. We've done mediation, etc. I just don't want them providing me my care. Every time they do, I just feel really down about it. If you continue to provide that person that same carer and it's getting them down, we're not really being inclusive. We're not really supporting them on that sort of sensitive way. And then the only other thing, Mark, I would say, and there is tons to go through on this one, and again, I say it's one of those easy ones that you can do, is around making sure that we are inclusive and as inclusive as we possibly can be. So that isn't by saying, let's have a Pride Day. Woo, we've done Pride and that's that. Let's have a Black History Day. Woo, we've done that. Now we've ticked that box. No, do it 365 days of a year. make sure that your service is constantly inclusive. Make sure the imagery you use in your adverts is always inclusive. Make sure the work you do is always inclusive. On Valentine's Day, make sure that you make it aware that people don't need to have a Valentine's. People can be single, people can be asexual, people can be in same-sex relationships, interracial relationships. We want to make sure that actually people don't feel that they're not included in that service in any way whatsoever. If we've got Father's Day, are we including everybody in that building who may never have been a father? Because if they've never been a father, I get that it's Father's Day and that's that, but actually, how are we supporting them on that? Because are we aware that not having children negatively impacts them? It could be that they've never biologically been able to have children and were never able to adopt. And actually the thought of not being a father really gets them down. So are we aware of what's going on during those days where people might be lonely? And instead of going, yay, Father's Day for everyone, which we should be doing, Father's Day for those people that matter, are we thinking to ourselves, who hasn't got children and how is it going to affect them? Have we asked that question? Have we understood for them whether it upsets them on that day? Because if it does, what are we going to do on that day that actually makes them feel included and tries to lift their spirits as much as possible? Yeah, there's a lot. Oh, someone's come up in the comments. Empathic, empathetic mean the same thing. Empathic is the older of the two versions. The only reason I was like, I'm not really too sure is like you've got all them people on TikTok go, I'm an empath, and I always pick this up, and I just get really confused.
There are a few other comments on LinkedIn that haven't pulled through for some reason, but we've got Sue has said, sometimes no one has had these life stories when they come to care settings themselves, can't tell us. Often you will learn them all over again because they're advanced in their diagnosis and some are non-verbal. Would love it if those conversations could be had with the individuals. Completely agree. James was the one that said about the same thing, the meaning of the same things. There's another one of the most critical pieces of information for me gleaned at assessment stage. How do you like me to enter your property? A great one for home care providers. And when you were talking around mealtime dignity, I've got a link I'll share in the comments, but James has reminded everybody of Sanjay Droner's closed style aprons that he designed, which were picked up by the CQC. So James made me to it, but I've got a video of Sanjay talking about those, so you can definitely check them out because love them.
I love it all. Love close style aprons. Love Sanjay Droner's versions. There are other versions available, but Sanjay Droner's are amazing. The other question we need to ask ourselves as well is, though, when it comes to aprons, and I promise we can move on to the next quality statement in a second, but if we're talking about dignity, is it more dignified to wear an apron and make people know that actually you've got this requirement? Or are there those individuals, or would it be better for us where allowing people to just have their dinner as normal and then after dinner going and getting changed? There's one of those things where we've got to take into account everything, because actually if putting an apron on someone stresses them out and actually puts them off their meal or creates that sort of tension, or for someone with dementia, they start doing this as soon as you put it on because they're already wearing a shirt and tie and then you put something else on them and they're just like, well, it's suffocating. Don't do it. Document it in a care plan that actually wearing a clothes protector upsets this person at mealtime and negatively impacts their nutritional intake. They will have their dinner, and as soon as they've had their dinner, we will take them to their bedroom and we will support them to put some clean clothes on. It increases our washing. So what? That person has been able to enjoy their meal in the least restrictive way possible. And that's how we need to provide care, in that least restrictive way possible. Mark, shut me up. Go on to the next quality statement.
Next one, treating people as individuals. The CQC say we treat people as individuals and make sure their care support and treatment meets their needs and preferences. We take account of their strengths, ability, aspirations, culture, and unique backgrounds and protected characteristics. They've then broken that down into what that means, which is people's individual needs and preferences are understood, and these are reflected in their care, treatment, and support. Personal, cultural, social, and religious needs are understood and met. People are treated as individuals considering any relevant protected equality characteristics, and people's communication needs are met to enable them to engage in their care, treatment, and to support to maximise their experience and outcomes. Any thoughts on this one, Adam? Oh, you're on mute.
I covered my mouth up so you couldn't see the word that I mouthed just then. I think this is very much it's all much of the same on this. And if we've said it once, we've said it 1,000 times. But personalized care, we need to make sure that we're providing that personalized care for people. And when I say personalized care, I mean from the get-go, not from when they come through that door and they sit in the home and they're now a resident. From the minute you go and do their assessment, on that assessment, do you understand what their most favorite dinner is? Because if you understand what their most favorite dinner in the world is, and they're anxious about moving into a care home, cook them that dinner on the day they move in. Because if that dinner makes them feel relaxed and it's a piece of home for them, oh, I love sausage and mash, and I love it with gravy, but it's got to be onion gravy. Make them sausage mash and onion gravy on the day that they move in. Yes, it might mean that out of all the meals, you're making one special meal for that individual, but actually that shows from the minute you've met that person, you've understood who they are. Something very, very small, something very, very simple. But if you start including that in the work that you do, you're already showing that person that you really care about who they are. Making sure that on that assessment, it's thorough, and it needs to be thorough, but we don't just focus on those care aspects. So actually, what is that person really, really good at? What are the person's anxieties? What are things that upset that person? What are things that scare that person? What do they want to achieve in life? Yes, they might be 94, but they still might want to do stuff. I mean, we've seen older people jump out of airplanes, It's understanding what that means to people, and then also taking in their background, taking in their culture. And I think when it comes down to respect and dignity as well, we also have to understand that when we go and do these assessments, they may tell us things that have happened in our past. And we need to be able to say to them, how do you want this communicated in your care plan? Because it may be that they've had a really traumatic experience in the past. It may have been SA, it may have been another type of abuse, it may have been something completely non-victimizing, but still traumatic to them, that they don't want sharing with people. But it's important for you to know, to be able to inform the way that we provide them their care. So make sure you've spoken to them about how they want that reporting in the care plan, because they might not want every single person who's providing them care knowing that. But it's important to them that you know that, so that you can help create that care for them. And that comes from collaboration as well. So making sure that their relatives, their friends, their circles of support, their RPR, their advocates, their representatives, they are supported and they are included throughout this entire process, making known that actually they can't be making these decisions and going, well, mum likes it like this. I know she says it like this, but she actually likes it like this. That's for us to learn. We can't accept them to make decisions for them without any sort of backup, because that's what they say mum likes. And we've got to sort of take everyone's views into account, but then we document that as well, because you could do all of this wonderful work, and if you do not document in a care plan that actually this care plan's been created in cooperation and collaboration with the resident and their family and this person, it didn't really happen. But that's really good evidence to show who you've included in that. And then obviously reviewing and update your personalized care plans. Cultural competence, I think, is a huge one for us, Mark, on this one. And I know we could talk about training, and I know we could talk about just cultural awareness, but one of the things that I find works really well is making sure we're aware of what all the different religions potentially in our areas are, what that means to an individual, what their dietary preferences are usually under these religions, what holidays they celebrate, what holidays they don't celebrate. I provided care once for a lady who was a Jehovah. I made it known that this lady was a Jehovah, and she still received a birthday card from our company on her birthday. Which I know a lot of people going, oh, isn't that nice? But actually, no, she didn't celebrate birthdays, and we'd sent her a birthday card, which actually, at that time, years ago, just showed that we didn't really care about who this person was, because it was like, I know you don't celebrate birthdays, but we do, so here, happy birthday. And that is another thing that stuck with me. So making sure we know what's a requirement of people's cultural backgrounds and how you're documenting that as well, and how you're making sure that the team are aware of that. Again, we're talking about dignity, we're talking about active listening. I think protected characteristics is a big one. I know I started off the show by saying Angela Rayner says we're going to protect the T in LGBT, and I know I hark on about the LGBT community a lot, but actually protected characteristics of all types, so age, disability, colour, race, pregnancy, all of that. We need to make sure that we're looking after those protected characteristics as much as we possibly can do, and that we're supporting people with those as well, and making sure that although our team might not agree with people's life or people's or how people were born and their orientation, that never transcends beyond their own head. So it never goes further than them thinking in their head, but I just don't like gay people because I'm gay and I accept people don't like gay people, and that's absolutely fine. The minute you then say to someone though, oh, I know you're gay, but it doesn't really sit well with me, we're not protecting those people. We're not being caring. We're not being kind. And again, that comes down to that inclusive environment as well. Mark, I would just probably finish on making sure that you've got your feedback mechanisms in place. Your team are aware of how people can provide feedback. Your relatives, your residents are aware of how people can provide feedback. It's not just one avenue of feedback. It could be a multitude of ways. Let's also think about the accessible information standards here as well. So are we thinking verbally, email? Are we talking dictate to text? Have we got easy read documents? And then providing reviews and feedback on that, feeding back to people on that feedback, and then continuously learning.
Thank you very much. We've had a comment here. Doesn't tell me who it is, but they've had a tough day with despondent team members. This is just what I needed today to see people fired up and passionate about what we do. I'll find out who that is in a minute. I'll log back onto LinkedIn. So there's a huge emphasis in this quality statement around religion and culture, which you spoke around. There's a link in the best practice guidance on culturally appropriate care, which actually, if you then start flicking through, takes you through to a lot of different resources on the CQC website. But those resources aren't in the best practice guidance. So just a heads up to carve some time out to spend playing around on the CQC website. A lot around advocacy, both internally and external advocacy, how you identify whether somebody needs an advocate. Relative involvement is listed in there. There's a few reports that talk around family carers, providers upskilling them, especially if it's a recently new diagnosis. Sensory needs, which doesn't really talk too much in the actual quality statement on the CQC website. But when you start reading some of the reports, a lot of them link back to actually what the provider could have done more or has done around sensory needs and adapting properties or the service to those. There is one on the CQC that links around monthly training around equality, which I don't know. I question whether a service was actually training every month on equality or not. I'd imagine it was a team meeting and something was discussed as opposed to training.
What I would say is, make it a meeting agenda. So it could be an agenda item each month on, we're going to cover this under equality this month, we're going to cover this under equality this month. Totally. Make sure you pick a different part of the policy each month. Whatever it be, definitely have it as a meeting agenda. But actually providing training on a monthly basis, you're going to disengage your team.
No, 100%. And bankrupt yourself, probably.
Yes.
There's also... there's a literature on the CQC website. It's not been updated since last year, but on equalities in dementia, which was a link to some research that was done, which they also link. I'll share that in the comments. But otherwise, I think you've covered everything else, Adam. On to the next one.
Why not, eh?
So, independence, choice, and control. So a very short statement. So we promote people's independence so they know their rights and have choice and control over their own care, treatment, and well-being. So any thoughts from you? I think for me, when I read this one, there isn't much other than around sexual safety and relationships and activities. There isn't much more that's gleaming, but I'll have a look at my other screen on the report bit while you're talking.
So again, I'm going to probably, I think the next comment in this chat is going to be, Adam, shut up, you've already said this. But I think, again, a lot of this comes down to knowledge, awareness, training, and research. So one thing I would say to everybody is allocate yourself 1-2 hours a month as a manager to go out there and go, this is my protective time or actually, no, do one better. Get yourself an equality champion, equality, diversity, and dignity champion. Or get yourself a caring champion. I don't care what you call them. Get yourself a champion, and don't just go, oh, by the way, you're our DEI or you're our EDI champion or you're this champion. Make them a role, do a job description for it, and then give them some protected time each week on the job to say, look, you get an hour a week to go and do some research for me. And every month, I want you to come to me with a load of ideas of what you found that's going on out there regarding this, regarding that, regarding this. And you could do this for all sorts. And you could make sure that, especially for, say, the caring domain, for example, we could say, look, we're just going to make you a champion for this domain because there's a lot of stuff that falls under here. EDI, independence. I want you to come to me with all these different ideas, because actually, if you sent somebody out there, they could probably come back the next month and go, oh my God, did you know that this cutlery exists and it does this and it does that? And actually, it looks like normal cutlery, but it sort of stops tremors for people, and the spoon stays still while you eat it. Or there's this mug with a handle that when you turn the handle, the mug doesn't actually move, which is easier for people so they're not spilling it. That's how you're going to learn more and more and more, not doing it all yourself as a manager, but actually empowering your team to take on some of this responsibility as well. So for me, under independence, I would be thinking adaptive equipment. And I don't just mean, a fancy chair that they can sit in and be in the living room. Great, totally, absolutely needed. But is there other adaptive equipment that person could utilize? I've already gone through quite a lot of it, so I won't really touch on that again. Mark, we know about technology. If you are going to use Alexas and Googles in your home, please make sure your DSPT is up to date, because people can just drop in on them now, or whatever they call it. But is there some technology out there that can support people if you're on home care and you're having to go, and then I don't want to do you out of business, but you're having to go every single day, and actually one of the things that family want you to do is someone's medication, but you've got a million other things to do there. Have you suggested to the family that actually they create the Dosset boxes up themselves, and they use timer activated alarm medicine boxes? So that person, because they have got the capability and they understand that, they just forget to take it. Why are we taking that away from them when actually we can introduce something else to them that alerts them that they need to take their medicine, and they can pop it into the hand and they can take it themselves? As generations move into care now, we are going to have more tech-savvy people receiving care and support. So have we introduced things like smartwatches for people, especially if people of younger ages, that send them prompts and reminders? And if we're doing that, are we supporting them to set up their own prompts and reminders, calendars? So a lot of stuff around that. And again, that comes under that sort of self-care as well. Rights, dignity. I think that's again just around the awareness, making sure that we're supporting people and our teams on that, making sure we're understanding around advocacy services, our team know what advocacy services are, and the people we're supporting know what's available to them through advocacy services. Mark, we already spoke around freedom and the freedom to choose, but again, it's just making sure we've documented that choice and control, making sure that we're actually supporting people to have that choice and control, making sure we're providing them options, making sure that we're flexible. So not it is breakfast between 8 and 10. It is breakfast whenever you want breakfast. It might not be that we can do everything for you, but we will try our hardest. And I'm pretty sure our team know how to make a bacon sandwich at 2 o'clock in the morning. And if that's when you want to have your breakfast, that's when you want to have it. So flexibility in what we're doing. Really think about informed choices, really think around that decision making and that autonomy. A really good example from one of my services recently, and I won't divulge details because I don't want to break GDPR, but it was a lady that smoked, couldn't verbally communicate it. So what the team did was they printed off all the things around smoking, pros and cons, not that there's many pros, and asked that person to point out what the risks of smoking were, what the effects of smoking would be. And that was a way that we supported that person to make that choice to go, actually, I do know what's going on. I just really want my cigarette right now, please. Documented. And that's actually supporting that person to make that decision. We've spoken around holistic care planning, but actually, have we looked at holistic approaches? I was really lucky on a couple of Fridays ago. Stephen, my partner, is a wellbeing practitioner. He's been on our show a couple of times, and he's also joined us at some of our live events. Him and his business partner came down to one of my nursing homes and provided us a 2-hour sound bath. And it was incredible. I mean, sound bowls and chimes and meditation and breathing techniques. And there was chimes that the residents could use and hold. And I have never seen that home so quiet. It was beautiful. Everyone was relaxed. Everyone was peaceful. It's not always about medication. It's not always around health. It's always something more. And actually, what are we doing about that something more? And with that something more, are we looking at preventative care as well? Mark, I think I'm going to stop there, but there is a lot more that I would like to say, but I've just seen the time.
There is a lot of crossover between this one and the other quality statements. The only things, just having a quick flick through, and just touching there on something you spoke about smartwatches, is actually the benefits of what they can do. So I'm terrible, I don't ever wear my Apple Watch, but it can help with sleep patterns, your heart health. That does have a section around medications on there if you've got somebody that wants independence around medication management. Menstrual cycles, it does your blood pressure, your oxygen stats, can obviously tell you when you're stressed. So a lot of things that a lot of the equipment out there for telehealth offers actually might be able to do on an Apple Watch or other watches are available. There is talk in the inspection around the number of people, and this is predominantly learning disability services, but safe processes around giving somebody freedom versus safely managing that and allowing them out into the community if they're living in a care home on their own. Links to the Safe Places scheme, which is one that I use when I was managing the LD service. The only couple of services I'd give a shout out to is throughout this whole key question, there's a lot of around access and relatives' rights to visiting. And I think actually if you're a service and you don't do visiting very well, or you haven't got many relatives that do attend, is reach out to Rights for Residents. I'll share a link in the comments. They've been on our show before, but a fantastic team that have got loads of resources, are more than happy to engage with care providers around how actually they open the doors to people. And we know there's quality statements all around activities and wellbeing, and actually just a shout out to NAPA, who are the National Activity Providers Association. So I think if you've got an activity lead, or even if you don't have a lead, it's definitely worth networking in with them. They're a charity, but they have regular meetings, annual events and bits and pieces, but just full of good ideas that you could implement into your service.
And don't forget John's campaign. I'm a John's campaign ambassador, so I will be cursed by Julia if I don't mention John's campaign. So johnscampaign.org, I think it is. Go check it out. Very similar to Rights for Residents, but it's all around the access to an individual. It started off with people with dementia in hospitals. It's spread everywhere now. And it was really around making sure that I had an inquiry today, actually, at one of my homes. And the person who came to see me was like, so what times can I visit? And I was like, what time do you want to visit? It is 24/7. There is no locked door here. You can come whenever you want. It is your home. And actually, there is still that stigma out there that you can only visit at certain times in a care home. Even hospitals are cutting in onto this now. There are many wards out there where you can visit whenever, apart from protected meal times, which is fantastic. So yeah, it's just around making sure that you're sort of making that aware to the people who use your services, that people can come and stay as long as they want, as often as they want, because it is their home.
100%. I'll drop those links in after I've read the next one. So, responding to people's immediate needs. So we listen to and understand people's needs, views, and wishes. We respond to those in the moment, and we will act to minimize any discomfort, concern, or distress. I think other than what we've kind of touched on tonight, I think for me, it's just how you anticipate somebody's decline in health or their need. I was on a meeting this morning looking at a digital care planning that's utilising AI. And I think actually that system that I looked at, and I don't know whether it's in the public domain yet, that is going to transform how you anticipate need. And I think actually if you've got a digital care planning system in place, you probably want to reach out to whoever it is that you liaise with around what their plan is for AI, because I think that's going to streamline and automate a lot of what we do. But yeah, Adam, over to you. I've shared Rights for Residents in the comments, but I'll also do NAPA and John's campaign now.
I feel like I'm repeating myself on a lot of this. You know, it comes down to empathy again, doesn't it? It comes down to that immediate response to people's needs. I mean, how often do you see in a service someone going, help me, help me, help me? And someone turns around and goes, I will do, I'll be 5 minutes, and off they go, and they don't come back. And that's no detriment to the carer. It's because that person is probably always shouting, help me, help me, help me. But we've become numb to it. And it's a case of, well, I'm really sorry, I can't right now. But, I'll turn around and respond anyway. Whereas it only takes 2 minutes to sit down and go, is everything okay? Oh, right. Oh, and talking to them and listening to them. And if that person is doing that a lot, and they are asking for help a lot, and there isn't anything underlying there, find some additional support. Document every single interaction that you're having. And it might be that actually this person requires one-to-one support, because that alone, not having that person with them, is terrifying them. I've already spoken about trauma-informed care. We have many people in this country who have been, who are foundlings, who were abandoned as children, who have been adopted through later life, who've probably been through divorce. Children may have left them, or they may have broken up with friends or families, and might have a fear of abandonment. And actually, they just need that closeness quite a lot. And how can we provide that even further? So it's around being as responsive as we can be, but also proactive about it as well. So not becoming numb to it. And actually, if what we're doing currently is not working and they're still doing that, let's look at a different way about how we can do this. We'd spoken around, I think, in effectiveness, and we'll talk about it in responsiveness as well when we talk around that key question. But using some actually really good baseline tools as well. So have you got baselines of your residents in the care plan? So actually, you know how Joan usually is. Does she usually smile? Is she usually chatty and lively? And does she usually walk around? And does she usually eat well? Have you got a pain ad tool that you use that actually allows you to see when this is different for this individual, so we can preempt their pain and that we can preempt their responses? Do we have in a care plan that actually we know someone's emotional state is starting to change when they start presenting like this? To approach them, don't just go, oh my God, this person's going to have challenging behavior in a second. Is it are you okay? How can we support you? I've noticed you're not really feeling yourself at the moment. Or is it something completely different where if we ask that question, it's going to trigger the behavior even more? Would it be us going over to them and going, oh, do you know what? I'm just about to start a jigsaw. Do you want to come and help me? And actually just intervening before that person's emotion changes for the worse for them, because it might be that they just need that human interaction. So it is around that prompt support, understanding needs and wishes. Mark, again, we've gone over this a number of times. Comprehensive care assessments, making sure we're including people, making sure we have got something in a plan, in a care plan, in something of things that are important to me. And like you said, Mark, not just things that are important to me, having a newspaper in the morning. Fine. Why? Why is that important to that individual? Teach us, show us why it's important, because if we know why it's important, we will understand it. It's all about impact. CQC might ask you in your PIR successes to care, and you might go, oh, we've done really, really well because we went to the zoo. Great. What was the impact on the residents? Because you might have gone to the zoo and the residents might have absolutely hated it. But if you go to the zoo and it's the opportunity for residents that they've never had, they've never been to a zoo, they've seen the wonders of the animal kingdom, it's made them elated, they've got that fresh air, they came back, they were in a really good mood. Actually, this person usually has behavior that presents as challenging in the evening, but after the zoo they didn't, and it actually was a really nice settled evening for them. That's what we care about, is the impact. So when it comes to understanding needs and wishes, we get people want stuff, and we get stuff's important to people, but it's understanding why it's important and what it means to that person and what not having that would do to that person. So again, it's around that impact for me. Training, development. I would say again, supportive environments. But I think a lot of this is quite repetitive. I think if you can nail a couple of these quality statements, you're pretty much providing evidence across the board for them. It's all around making sure that you're documenting it, you're recording it, things triangulate and things are meaningful. You're not just creating a care plan for care plan's sake. You're truly evidencing it for what it really is, and you're being able to demonstrate that impact. You're being able to show how that is benefited an individual, communicating it with your team, and making sure that everything integrates well together as well. So if you've got a sleeping care plan that says this person wants to sleep well at night, and they want a long night rested sleep, but actually in their social history, we've got this person likes getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day, that sleeping care plan needs to reflect that. So that sleeping care plan needs to reflect what's in other care plans. You know, nutrition care plans need to reflect what's in, I don't know, likes and dislikes. It's all got to feed in together. You can't have care plans that don't marry up. They've got to marry up. They've got to triangulate.
No, absolutely. And before we move to the last one, just a couple of bits that I thought about when you were talking. Was one around anticipating need, and you touched there on behaviours, is around positive behaviour support. And I think definitely when I put my LD hat on, I remember back in the day, you'd raise a referral and you'd probably have somebody out there that week, if not the next week. Now, when you raise a referral, you're waiting months and months and months, but actually how does that impact on the person's well-being and the other people that are living in that service's well-being? There is a guide that will be coming out via Log My Care that I've written with them around positive behaviour support, some simple things that you can put in, but also a template that you'll be able to download with that, which will tie you over until you've got that mental health expert that can come in and embed that kind of into your service. Just wanted to run through before we go on to the final domain, because I'm conscious that will be a bit more meaty. Some of the things that have been picked up in CQC reports is why providers haven't either got good or outstanding: lack of person-centred care, failure to treat people with compassion, dignity and respect, staff attitude hasn't come across as positive during inspections, lack of privacy, CQC observing non-caring and compassionate care, there's a lack of attention to emotional and physical needs, lack of access to family and friends, so that goes back to what we were talking around visiting rights. One provider unable to evidence how the provider supports relationships and networks, lack of equipment or equipment isn't maintained or inspected, lack of ability to access the community, especially for those that have got mental capacity, lack of choice and control, poor activity provision, their cultural needs aren't met, lack of sexual safety, no lone working provision in place for staff, and workload isn't manageable. And I think we're probably going to talk about workload next, because the last part of this domain is workforce wellbeing and enablement. So the CQC say we care about and promote the wellbeing of our staff, and we support and enable them to always deliver person-centred care. Now, before I come back to you, Adam, there are a couple of subtopics for this one. So they specifically mention support and wellbeing of staff, unpaid carers and volunteers, which if you watch back our other couple that we've done around the CQC framework, there's a lot of talk around unpaid carers and volunteers throughout the whole framework. Lone working comes in here, caseloads and workload, and staff safety, including sexual safety. Over to you, Adam.
Who cares about staff? No, I'm joking. I think it's super important that we don't lose track of this. And I'll go back to that sound bath we had at one of our homes the other week. It wasn't just for the residents, it was for everyone. The team sat down, the team got involved, and they actually found it really beneficial as well. There's a lot we can do around this. First off, I hate the word staff. I absolutely despise the word staff. I know it's a common word. I know a lot of people use it, but I think what I found through my years in social care is that us and them culture actually disengages your team, and having that sort of hierarchical, authoritarian nature. We do need our reporting structures. We do need our line managers, and I totally get that. I'm not trying to shake the system up too much. But I think language is really, really important. There's a movie that I absolutely love, and I don't know whether I've spoken about it on this show before, so hashtag spoilers, but it's called Pontypool. It's a zombie film, so, you know, I'm a bit of a horror geek. I absolutely love my horror films. But what I absolutely love about Pontypool is instead of, it is a satire, but it's still classed as a horror as well. Instead of the virus being transmitted through bites, it's transmitted through language. And actually, it's really clever is to think, actually, this is how powerful language is, because it can wipe out a population. Language could actually bring us to our knees and destroy us. And language is super important when it comes to our team. Using that correct language can be completely changing to a situation. Because if I said, oh, my staff know what they're doing, my staff know this, my managers do this, whereas, oh, the managers I work with, the team that I work with, my colleagues that I work with, you know, we are a team that I work with. I don't own them. I don't possess them. We actually work in unison together. That slight language change automatically changes the dynamic with you and your team. Do you say spoken to or spoken with? I've spoken to you about this. Oh, okay, condescending. Well, I've spoken with you about this. You know, we've spoken about it a couple of times, and it's really interesting to get your feedback. I've spoken with you. I've spoken with you, not I've spoken to you. We don't want to be condescending. We don't want to be patronizing. So, you know, those are just some things that I think about when it comes to the team and to the workforce, is the language and the approach and the sort of terminologies we're using. So simple changes, but can you go and change some of those things? Because if so, they may really benefit your team. Making sure your workforce environment is supportive, making sure that you're actually listening to people. If someone's got a complaint and they bring it to you, make sure you do something about it. Make sure you've got that open environment, but also make sure you've got those professional boundaries as well. You don't want to become too familiar with your team as leaders and as managers, because if you become too familiar with some and not familiar with the others, you've instantly become seen by a lot of the team as having favorites. It's really difficult. I know we get to like people quite a lot in our jobs, and we do go to work and we do want to be friendly with everyone, but we need those boundaries as well. We need those barriers to make sure that actually there's equity in the work that we do, there's equality in the way that we're approaching everything. Do your team buildings, but don't put people on the spot too often, because you need to understand, just as we need to understand what matters to our residents, we need to understand what our team are like as well. And it might be some things that actually trigger responses in our team that they don't like. So we need to understand how they learn, how they approach things, what they're comfortable with. Just because we think actually this person's quiet, it's great, we'll do an icebreaker and bring them out their shell, that might not work for them, and you might end up with their notice in a week or a couple of months' time, because they might think, actually, I don't really feel comfortable. They put me in a position that made me feel awful, and they might not even see that you were trying to do well. So it's about not being misinformed in the way that we do things. In your employee handbooks, in your employee programs, have you got things around financial well-being? Have you got things around mental health? Have you got things around local activities in the area? Have you got health schemes that are available at work? Do you provide people, have you got resources at work around stopping smoking? Have you got sort of dieting resources at work? And I hate to use the word dieting, but I don't know, healthy lifestyle choices. Do you provide healthy lifestyle choices to people at work? I know a lot of places go, but we want to provide dinners for our team. Great, absolutely great. If you can afford to do that as a service, brilliant. But are you providing them with chicken pie and chips every day, or are you actually providing healthier options every day? Because you're still providing them their lunch, and you can do halal options, you can do vegetarian options, you can do whatever. But actually, are you being a responsible employer by providing them those healthy options? Because if all you're doing is providing them that unhealthy food and that unhealthy junk, are you really looking after them? If they don't want to choose that path, that's absolutely totally up to them. If they think to myself, actually, I'd rather just go out and get a McDonald's, fine, totally. You know, this is just what we do as an organization. We're promoting that healthy eating within our workforce because we want to protect you. We want to keep you well. We want to keep you healthy. We want to keep you happy. Can you offer gym memberships? You know, it's all around that sort of mentality. But again, understanding people's needs. We don't want to just have a blanket approach of going, well, everyone who works for us gets a gym membership and that's your only benefit. Because if you've got people who have got protected characteristics that prevent them from using a gym effectively or as regularly, we're sort of discriminating against them as well. So making sure we're inclusive in the offerings that we have. I would talk about professional development, Mark. I don't know whether you would say this comes under this, but ensuring people are aware of what they can do career-wise within your organization and beyond. So this is what you can achieve while you're with us, but this is also what you can do elsewhere in social care. So these are the pathways you can do. If you do this course, and this course, you could end up here. Or if you do this course, and this course, you could end up here. So are we supporting people with their progression? And are we encouraging them to go as well? And that's a really difficult thing, but are we actually saying to them, it's okay, you can leave us and you can go do amazing things, and we're going to be really, really proud of you. We want to support you to get there, because that is going to matter to them as well, because that's going to make them feel valued. I would say work-life balance, Mark, but I remember about 2 years ago, you educated me and said life-work balance. And ever since then, I've always said life-work balance. Life comes first, work comes second. And are we supporting people to have that good life-work balance? Are they saying, I want to work 7 days a week? Fine, but actually let's get to the bottom of this, because 7 days a week you are going to end up burnt out at some point, and how can we support you to have that healthy life? But also our managers, you know, I don't give brownie points for saying, oh, did 80 hours this week. No, I don't want you to do 80 hours this week. I want you to do 40. How can I help you only do 40 hours? That's important to me. I want you to be able to go home and have that time with your family. I lost a lot of years with my dad through social care, and that's no detriment to the business that I worked for or the time that he was at. But I even remember having my on-call phone the day my dad was dying, and I had to say to someone, look, you just need to take this phone. My dad is dying. He will not be here in 5 hours' time. I need to go and spend that last 5 hours with him. And I always get emotional talking about it, but it's important that people learn from my mistakes. I don't have regrets about life, but I do feel sad that I lost a lot of years with my dad because I put work first, and you never know what's around the corner. So it's about making sure that for our teams, we make them realize that actually life is important and they need to value that as much as possible. I'm not a huge fan of Employer of the Month or Employee of the Month or something like that, but I do think you need recognition. I do think we need to do recognition programs somehow, be that an email at the end of the day going, oh my God, great work today, team. Absolutely fab. Say team, not guys. Guys is gender specific, and we don't want to make people not feel included. And that's not me being sarcastic. It's true. Try and use non-gender terminology. But, you know, great day today, team. This has been really good. This is the impact you've had. absolutely fab, wonderful, smashed it out the park. Stuff like that means a lot more than a certificate once a month, because actually we're including everyone. Employee of the month usually isolates quite a lot of people, and you can only do one employee a month. So if you've got a team of 70, that's 69 people that aren't going to be very happy. So thank everybody, and make sure that your recognition programs are structured. I've spoken about champions already, but I will bring that back up again, because I do feel like for growth, we need to provide them those additional roles and those additional opportunities. We might not be able to provide promotions, but we can provide that additional responsibility, and then recompense them for that if possible. If your finances allow for it, pay them a little extra. It might only be 5p an hour. And I know that might seem insulting to some, but if you can just afford 5p an hour extra, because I know how stretched social care is now, do it, because it will mean the world to people, and it is important. Anything else, Mark? I've probably got loads, but I know you're...
Yeah, no, I agree with champions, and I think CQC also love services that have champions in different bits and pieces. And the only thing I would say on them is don't just do it for a tick box, knowing that the CQC likes it. It could, help you go from good to truly embed it, actually give those staff, if they're, I don't know, mental health champion, actually put them on the mental health, first aid, of course, upskill them, give them the tools, give them the time, give them the resources and the autonomy to actually embed that role into the service.
Give them an agenda at the team meetings every month.
No, 100%.
Oh, so we're going to hear from the IPC champion first, then we're going to talk to our mental health champion, and then we're going to talk to our freedom to speak up champion. You might have other champions. Oh, we're just going to... Your falls champions, make sure they're in your clinical governance meetings, because actually they can provide a lot of that feedback. Make that work important. Make it matter. Show the impact.
No, absolutely. Some of these you might have touched on, but the notes I had were a lot of the inspection reports for the outstanding talk about that family feel, more so for care homes, but that family feel. So what I would say is get to know your staff really well. I'm going to share a link in a minute around supervision and appraisals, because we did a show, must have been about a month ago or so, around revolutionizing supervisions. It was a really kind of tactile show. A lot of people reached out to us afterwards to say that they've changed the supervisions within their workplace. So yeah, definitely get to know your staff. Around the support, Adam's touched on that, but make sure that staff have got the time to, talk about their struggles, what's concerning them, but also offer them support and signposting. You don't have to provide everything, but you can just signpost people. So whether that's for financial support, whether that's for menopause, make sure that you set time aside so actually staff feel that they can come and talk to you. Adam spoke around succession planning. I think making sure your induction is really in depth, but also making sure that staff are trained if they go up a role, because I think we like to reward staff that are committed, that do a good job, and they go from frontline care worker maybe to a senior, then to a deputy. But actually, what training do they have in that leadership route? I always like to harp on around finances and budgets, and actually, just because I come from frontline staff doesn't mean that I know how to manage budgets and bits and pieces. So make sure that actually you're talking honestly to staff, and that staff feel comfortable telling you actually what they don't feel upskilled in. Work-life balance or life-work balance, for me, a huge part of it is the internal system we use for communication. So I hated services that I was in WhatsApp groups galore, because then I actually stopped using WhatsApp for my family and friends, which then alienated me from them. Actually look at other communication tools out there. So we use Blink in my workplace, but there's Slack, which I've used in other workplaces. Both have free modules, and then you can add on, but definitely a way of kind of separating work and personal life. You've spoken around recognition and reward, definitely something that plays a key part in this quality statement. There is a section that talks about constant managerial support, which concerns me if you're a small provider that doesn't necessarily have a deputy. So I think actually if you're listening and you think, oh, actually, I don't have a deputy or I don't have seniors, and when I was a registered manager, I had neither in the early days, actually make sure that your directors have something in place so that you still get that time off, and actually there's still support from somebody, but it's not you on your annual leave. Resilient.
No, I was going to say, just on that as well, that could be internally in your organization, but also saying to your directors, look, I don't have that support, but I need to be a part of some networks in my local area that is going to support me. Use your Skills for Care Registered Manager Network. I'm going to take 4 days off a year where I'm going, well, I'm not going to take them off. You're going to pay me for them, where they're going to be self-development days where I'm going to go to manager conferences. I'm also going to join the Registered Managers Nominated Individual Care Review WhatsApp group. I know we've just spoken about WhatsApp groups, but we've got a really supportive WhatsApp group going out there for people in social care. Make sure you make social care your support, because we are all here to get each other through it. So you might not have that internal support, but document how you're finding that support as well. Because if you're going out there and learning and seeking that support, yes, it might look bad on your directors that they're not providing you that. But if you can get that support elsewhere and you're getting that peer support, super important. And there are so many options out there. The Outstanding Managers Network on Facebook, most joined managers group in the country on Facebook. Join them, find those people, get your support, join your local areas, and also go to your local authority care forum, go to your ICB social care workforce groups if you've got them, because all of that is support for you as a manager, and you can go away feeling, actually, I'm not on my own here, because it's so easy to get sucked into the abyss of, I am all on my own, I don't know how I'm going to cope.
No, absolutely. And I think for me, it's actually, you see from those manager groups and the comments that actually quite often they'll come back and say, actually, thanks very much. I always thought this was just me. And it's nice to know that there's other people kind of going through it. But it is that linking in. The only other thing, I know somebody commented earlier in the comments around staff feedback and surveys. One thing is just be aware of making sure that you action what comes out of those surveys, just so staff don't get, actually, what's the point of filling it in? Or that you're not doing too many surveys so that actually they get bored of, fed up of doing it. But look at other ways that you can engage with staff. So actually, could you put together a focus group looking at something? And I think if you're going to do a focus group, make sure you use people that actually want to be there and you haven't just done it for doing its sake, because I think then that also kills what you're trying to do, but also it goes around like rapid fire within your team about actually that it was just done on the hop and wasn't done properly. So, and I think the only other thing you touched on, go on, Adam. No, the only other couple of things was around pathways, when you spoke around actually what you can do outside of social care. Actually, can you offer apprenticeships? And I'm not talking about your MVQ apprentice. Actually, could you get some social workers? Could you get some therapists to come into your organisation on an apprenticeship, which will also benefit and upskill your team at the same time? And the only other thing is around on-call and out of hours, which popped into my head when we were talking around that constant managerial support. Actually, make sure you've got set guidelines of what that on-call's for, and make sure that you stick to it, and actually that your staff know that it's for an emergency reason, not for, listening to you there, Adam, about your dad reminded me on my wedding day in the morning that somebody rang me to tell me that we were running out of toilet roll, and I was like, I'm about to walk down the aisle, in a minute, just get down Tesco's and buy one. And I'll see you later this evening. But yeah, I think staff will, if you give them the means, they will just come to you all the time. Actually push back and get them to use their own initiative and thought process themselves, because actually it makes them stronger in themselves. Somebody's just too many surveys is boring and repetitive.
Hey, listening to that CQC, I think we've got another one come through. So many surveys. When you said really great tips, Mark, and I hope you got them that toilet roll before you got wedded.
I didn't, I'm afraid. Could have just gone to my house.
Amazing. When you were talking about focus groups as well, the only other thing that came into my head is involve your team in recruitment. So where possible, if you can do, and you can't have everyone interviewing everyone, but can you involve your team at any point? Have you got leaders coming into your organization? Are you recruiting managers that actually you can have focus groups with, instead of it just being a one-stage interview or a two-stage interview where it's a presentation at the end? Can that second stage interview actually be a focus group with your team, so they get to be involved in that recruitment process? Their thoughts and their thoughts are taken into account. They're being valued. Their opinions matter. I think that's super important. And I suppose you could also reflect on earlier on in this conversation around some of the other quality statements here, is can we involve residents in that care plan, in that recruitment process as well? Can we take their thoughts on board? I'm thinking independent choice and all of that sort of stuff. that is really good evidence to say that not only can they choose who their carers are, we involve them in the recruitment process, and they say, actually, I don't think this person's going to do well in this home because I don't get a good vibe from them, or oh, that person's lovely, I can't wait for them to join, I'm going to be dead excited. Are we taking their opinions into account when we recruit? We might not be able to do that all the time, and if we are going to do it, try and make it consistent, but evidence it as well, because that is really good evidence to show that we're listening to both of our team and our residents when it comes to who we employ in the service, not just our own gut instinct.
No, 100%, 100%. I've just shared a link in the chat as well around 8 elements of positive staff experience, which is a tool that the NHS use. But actually, when I was reading through it, it has some great tips there of engaging your staff.
Mark, it's going dark.
What's that, sorry?
It's going dark.
It is, I'm afraid it is. I think summer is over and, we're heading into
something to be over. It has to have started.
Very true, very true. I have also just dropped into the comments the manager's WhatsApp group. So if there is anybody that wants to join, please do feel free to join that. Adam, anything else from you before we close out tonight?
No, apart from download our posters, get them up, make sure that your team are aware of what the quality statements are, make sure that they're not just aware of what the quality statements are, but how you're going to meet them as a service, show them these videos, use them as your training. I'm not saying that you're going to get CPD points for doing this, but actually, if you start showing things like this to your team and you start from the ground up, this is what this quality statement means, have a listen to it. Yeah, you're going to make a rod for your own back, because they might be sat here thinking to this going, well, they don't do anything about this when it comes down to us as a workforce. They keep calling me staff. In fact, I got called a grunt the other day. You might make yourself, they might go, why aren't you doing this as an employer? But actually, great, listen to them if that's what they're going to come back to you with. But share this stuff with them, not just for yourself. Share this knowledge with others. If you've got more that you want to share with us, please let us know, and we can put together a series of top tips from providers over our social media to get that out to everyone as well. Mark and I just sit here rambling every single week because we've got nothing better to do. Everyone else has got all these great tips out there, so please do share them with us, and we can share those out as well across our network. But other than that, a huge thank you to everyone joining us.
No, definitely. I think the only thing for me is that we do get sent documentation from people. We don't put our stamp on it. We don't put our logo on it. We'll upload it. We'll link it back to your own organisation. So actually, if you've got something that works really well in your service and you think, oh, actually, this would be a great tool for somebody else, drop it to us in an email and we'll upload it, link it back to your service. It's all about what you said, Adam. Sharing is caring.
Teamwork makes the dream work. I think we should start some bumper stickers, Mark. I know we don't charge for anything, but maybe we should start doing some merch just to raise some doing this for free. What do you reckon?
Some magnetic car logos.
Let us know in the comments if you want Care and View merch and whether you're willing to pay for it. No, I'm teasing. Mark, is that it for tonight? What have we got going on next week?
That is it. I'm not going to lie, I don't have the window open to see what is coming next week, but watch this space because I will be getting it ready and sorted tonight or tomorrow. So I do think it'll be a good show.
Yeah, I think Paul. Are we right in thinking it's Paul Blaine joining us?
I think Paul's in a couple of weeks' time. I think it's Katvia Brown next week. I think so. Yeah.
So Kavita from LDG Training, they joined us for the appraisals and supervisions, shaking them up for the future. So please do check us out next week. It will be absolutely fabulous. Mark, a huge thank you for tonight again, as always.
No, good to see you. Good to see you. I'll see you in a week's time.
I'll see you in a
week's time as well. Thank you for logging on and listening tonight.
Perfect. Before we leave, just a huge thank you again to our sponsors, Prosperwell, CBAT, and Attis Care by Attis Insurance. The leading digital marketing agency, Prosperwell, the #1 spot for all of your healthcare and social care training needs, CBAT. And for anything insurance-wise, please get in touch with Attis Care. Without these people, we cannot provide you our services for free. This is the only way that we can continue providing you all of our resources, all of our time for absolutely free. Mark and I don't draw a wage from this. This just helps us continue the work that we are doing. But yes, until then, everyone have an absolutely fabulous week. Don't get downtrodden. You're most welcome, Sarah. Thank you for joining us. Until then, we will bid you adieu. Have a fab week. Stay safe, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
See you later.